Okay. So what I would like to talk about, I would like to continue with what we were speaking about last week, which is the topic was the devil. Okay, what the devil is really, and how we have always, through programming really, the programming of just how people have looked at the Bible. We have been kind of programmed to look at certain things in the way that they have shown us to look at it, which is through their lens, really. Today, what I would like to do is to show the conception of the devil, which is our creation. So I'd like to go into how the devil is really, how we really create our devils. Okay, so now what I want us to think about is the physical things, because everything has to be created from that which is above it, because there has to be a pattern below. So as above, so below, but whatever is below is as above also. So think about a man and a woman coming together, and they get together and they're going to, and they create a child. Now what you have is man and woman, but man and woman are supposed to be one. They're supposed to be one. So this is a unit that is now creating a child. Now, what I want us to look at now is remove the man and woman part of it and just look at woman, because we're all female principles. Whether you're a man or a woman, you're a female principle, and look at yourself as the unit of one. Okay, you are a unit, and within yourself there are many units within you, but but you're one. And everyone is what you call the female principle. They have the male principle, that is the projector or giver of life. When you have the female principle, which is more receptive, and it pretty much nourishes that life, brings it forth and brings it up. Okay, so now the woman's conception, with a man, is actually the creation of something. This is a creation of something that's there. So now when you look at yourself, each individual look at themselves, we have to figure out, if you're the female principle, then what is the male principle that's there? The male principle is a spirit that you and I are receiving, because we're receptive. We're receptive to something that's projecting something to us. Well, what you have projecting to you, you have either the spirit of the creator, which is light that we could take in, but usually we don't like light. Light comes into the world, the logos comes into the world, and that light is the life, actually, that comes into the world for all mankind, but mankind don't like the light because they love the darkness. So the spirit of the darkness then is actually what we are allowing ourselves to be receptive to. And so when that spirit comes into us, or we receive that spirit creates something in the individual. And it's darkness, because we don't like the light. So we're actually creating something, and this thing that we're creating is our conception with something else that's there. So we strip away all the physical things and look at the spirit mind, if you will, as this conception, but our minds are doing it. Okay? Our minds are doing it based upon what's around us and our programming. And when we wake up to know that, hey, the Father is where we need to go, then we start actually putting down all the lower things of the darkness and reaching for the light. Then we come out of it, because then we start ascending. The more that we do that the Father's Spirit says to do, this is how we start putting down the darkness and coming out of darkness. And so the reverence of Yahweh is actually the beginning of knowledge. So when we start reverencing our Father, then we all of a sudden we start receiving knowledge, light that comes in, and we start putting away the darkness. So in this now, in our own minds, in our own creation, in our own conception, we could bring forth either life, because the light is the life to all mankind. And so it gives man life when man receives it. But if we don't receive it and we like darkness, then that conception is bringing forth death. Okay? So we could bring forth that which is of the Holy Spirit, which is not the only spirit of the Father, but all the spirits of the Father. Okay? But the Holy Spirit is a spirit that comes into the world, and that's the light, because it's a female principle. It comes into the world, okay? And it comes into the world through the only begotten Son, okay? Which is the one who actually is the action of the Father. So the Holy Spirit comes in, and the Holy Spirit is there to wake each person up when that person starts to reverence the Creator. So when we receive that, this Holy Spirit, it shows us the illusion that we're in, because the Holy Spirit is trying to wake us up and actually reconnect us with the Father through that Holy Spirit. But there are many spirits around. And if you're in the earth, remember, in the earth, there's all kind of central and demonic forces that's in the earth. And we just happen to be in the earth because we were sown in it, okay? But we will be raised out of it. But we're sown in it. So it's all around us. So as we conceive this thing now, this baby that we conceive, this is our creation because we have been receptive to something that has brought this within ourselves. And now we have this baby that's what is really our devil. Now, as this baby matures within us, we're taking off the course of what the Father said to do. All we're doing is what the dark spirit wants us to do. And so this baby is growing, but this baby is only getting the fruit of darkness. And as it's getting the fruit of darkness, it grows up, and then it matures. It brings forth this, what you got is death. And so what I want you to look at is, just as you have different levels of heaven, as we were looking at, you have different levels of what you call death. Death is also this bottomless pit, which is also in our minds, okay? Because all of it is in us. And we could serve the darkness as much as we want to, and we could fall into different levels of this bottomless pit. You know, you could be a drug addict, that's one level. You could just be an individual who is dishonest and tell lies, but you haven't lost your faculties, being stuck on drugs, that's a different level. Okay, there are different levels of it going down, just as there are different levels of heaven going up. And you go as much as you want to reconnect with the Father, and you go as far as you can down until we wake up and start to turn around and do something different. Now, what I would like to show us now, which we all know already, is how this all is working according to your scriptures. Okay, so let's first go over to Luke chapter 16. We're going to look at that, and we're going to look at something that Yahshua told us here. Luke chapter 16. And first I'm going to read the first seven verses, and then we're going to go back and check it out with some other scriptures. So this is the parable of the dishonest manager. Okay. It says, then he also said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a manager. This is a rich man, and he had a manager. So somebody was managing his stuff. And he heard accusations that this man was wasting his possessions. The possession is what this rich man had and put the manager over. Okay? Now, if you think of some of the things that we have spoken about before concerning the creator creating something and putting somebody over that creation, And that thing went sideways and didn't do exactly what the Creator wanted. Well, you could put it right there because Yahshua knew exactly what was going on, but he's telling this to them in a parable. So he summoned him and said unto him, why is this that I hear about you? Give a complete accounting of your management, for you can no longer have this position. We're going to remove this position from you, in other words. So we're going to put other people in here, or put a different manager in here to manage this, and you're going to have to be put aside. You're going to have to lose that job, so you're going to pretty much fall. Okay? So now it says here, then the manager said to himself, what will I do? My ruler is taking away my position, whatever power he had, from me. I am unable to dig. Well, what do you dig with? You dig with the extensions of your body, your arms, and different things that you have. That's what you dig with, right? And to dig, your mind have to go into whatever you're doing, and your mind have to control your arms. And this is a body that you have, but now you got to think about it in a spiritual manner. In the spirit world, you don't have a physical arm. You have to use extensions, and if you're going to work in the physical world, you have to use something that moves physical things. So this is a spirit, but it can't dig, because if it loses its power over the physical world, it can't use it anymore. It's no longer, it can't do anything with physical things anymore. It's a discarnate spirit. Okay, so it can't use anything. But to dig or to work the land, it needs physical beings, as it was doing before, to work the land or to move it sideways away from the Creator. Okay, so here we go now. And I am ashamed to beg. Beg is a lowered position. When you're forced to beg, you don't control certain things. Now you have to become everything is dependent upon someone handing you something. So you don't have the power you had to, because now it's a situation that there's a great demotion, no power. Okay? So it says here now, in verse 4, it says, now, an idea is there. I know what I will do, that when my position is lost, it's gone from me, I will have friends who will welcome me into their houses. Well, into your houses, you have a body, and your body is made up of other bodies. Okay? The human person has different bodies that makes him up, whether we want to believe it or not. Okay? But anyway, the houses don't have to be one person. It could be all the people or all that they were managing. But you have a physical body, but you have spirit bodies. That's an etheric body. You have a mental body. You have an emotional body. Whether we want to believe it or not, these all come together to make up the human person. So here he's saying now, I'm gonna have friends invite me. Okay, invite me into the house, because notice what he said. They're gonna welcome me in there. He is not forcing that upon anybody. The people or whoever it is going to welcome. They're going to invite him. Okay, come on in, buddy. You know, whatever the case is, to come in. So notice what he did now. So now we're going to figure how we're going to cause these guys to follow me. So this is a spirit, and there are now the spirit wants to be able to dig or to work the ground still. Okay, so the spirit now is going to deal with that which is in the earth already, that has to follow certain things, okay, or would follow certain things, or certain rules. But now he has control over these individuals, but these individuals don't know this. They don't know what is about to happen. So if I've been the manager over a store for a long time and now I'm going to lose my job because my boss told me that, the people in the store don't know. Okay? I could make some final decisions right now to have them allow me to do certain things with them. And so here we go. So he summoned every one of his ruler's debtors. That means those who owe the ruler whatever the ruler says that needs to be owed. So you owe the ruler $1,000. Well, that's a debtor. Okay? Okay, so, and said to the first, how much do you owe my ruler? He said, 100 baths of oil. In other words, all 100%. I owe the ruler everything, okay? Because the ruler has put me in here to express the ruler. So guess what? Everything I have is the ruler's, okay? I came from the ruler and put me in here, and everything I gotta do is for the ruler, 100%. So he said to him, take back your acknowledgement of debt and sit down quickly and write it for 50. So right now, I don't owe the ruler 100 anymore because I'm cheating. I'm going to write it for 50. So right away, I'm not doing what the ruler said to do, but now I'm doing what another spirit said to do. Another spirit. So this spirit, if I follow the spirit, I become servant to it. I become a servant to this because I'm not dealing with the Father. I'm dealing with another spirit. Okay, so I become a servant to this particular spirit. Okay, then he said to another, how much do you owe? And he said, 100 ephah of wheat. So he said to him, take back your acknowledgement of debt and write it for 80. All we need to do, guys, is to not do what the Father instructed us to do, and we have corruption in there. Okay? And so when this dishonest manager now came to the ruler's debtors and said, because they don't know what's really going on, this is between the ruler and the manager. Now, but the manager is going to use deception to hold on to its position so it can continue ruling things even when it has lost its job. Because now if it's inside somebody, it's going to be controlling it from inside. So we are creating, what we have done actually now is this particular baby that we already had within ourselves. This entity could actually identify with this or actually feed this. So all we're going to be doing now, this baby is going to be wanting what this particular spirit has shown us, what it's all about, what it wants to express, and we become servants to that. But the baby is already there because we have, before time, all along, when we fell, whatever the case is, we have this baby within us, and this baby is a creation, something that we conceived by our own actions. Now, what I want us to do is consider that. And then I want us to go back to verse 1. Okay, and in verse 1 it says, then he also said to his disciples, there's a certain rich man who had a manager, and he heard accusations that this man was wasting his possession. So now a rich man who had a possession. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Okay, chapter 1. So in the beginning, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth. Now the rich man is a very powerful man. Now the earth became without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So something happened that was not kosher anymore, and something was going to go forth and fix that. Now, look at how it's fixed now. We got to look at it in this manner here. Now, so what you have here, you have Yahweh, the beginning. Okay, now, it says here, everything became empty because somebody got a hold of it after it was created and messed things up. And now this person ain't going to get their jobs anymore. They're going to lose their job. And something else has to come in and take over. So in verse 2, it says, now the earth became without form and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Notice what happened. We're going to fix it now. And the Spirit of Yahweh was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, if we take our minds out of the physical things and put it to the spirit things, we see creation here. Okay, remember, you have the spirit, you have the blood, and you have the water, and this is all one. Okay, and this is in the most holy place as the Father. But it uses those four living creatures in all of creation. We talked about that, okay? In all of creation, and the four living creatures manifest themselves through fire, earth, water, and air to start the very first part of creation, the lowest density, okay? But it needs the Father's 7 spirits to control everything and to give it the creation food, which is the 24 elders, or instruction to come up in whatever it is that is created. So here we see that in verse 1, we see that Yahweh. In verse 2, we see that the Spirit of Yahweh. That's 2. And we see the waters. Okay, so we see the Spirit, which is Father. Then we saw the Father's Spirit, which is the blood. Okay, life is in the blood. And the Spirit of Yahweh gives life. The light that comes in is the Spirit of the Father, and the light is the life. Okay? Life is in the blood. And we see the waters that everything comes out of, which is a representation of the only begotten Son, or the Logos. Okay? And this has to be on every level of creation. The same thing has to be duplicated. It comes out. So we see that. Okay? So now we go back to Luke. We go back over to Luke, and we go to verse 2. So it says, so he summoned him and said to him, man, you can't have this job anymore. And the manager said within himself now, hey, I'm going to lose my job, so I know what I'm going to do. I got to do something because I'm going to not have this anymore. I know what I'll do. I'll get folks who are going to invite me into their houses. Invite me in. Okay? So something in me have to be able to identify or speak to this other spirit that's there, that wants to come in. And it's going to work whatever is already in me. And it's going to use whatever is already in me to dig, and I'm going to follow its instruction. But I don't have to use that spirit, because the Father has a spirit too that's in here that says everything I tell you to do, you do 100%. You don't live by anything else but my every word. So I could follow that one too. I don't have to follow the other guys. But if I follow the other guys, then I'm no longer doing 100% of what the Father said to do. Because now I'm not living by the every word, but I'm only living by some of the words at that point. So here we have now, okay, let's go to Jacob real quick, or James. So this entity now says, okay, I'm going to have people who invite me in, but it's going to have them invite him in in order to draw them off course, just as it has already been doing. And now it's going to lose its job because of that. But if he gets other people to do it, it's going to pull everybody off course. In James chapter 4, here goes. Look in verse 5. So invite them into the body, into the house. All of a sudden, you got something going on now. Look at verse 5. James 4 and verse 5. Do you think that the scriptures teaches in vain that the spirit that dwells in us, we have allowed to come in, okay? Lusts to envy. But it doesn't only lust to envy, okay? That's just one of the things. It lusts to be greedy. It lusts for a lot of things. It lusts to be selfish, but it talks about envy in this particular scriptures. But that's not the only thing it does, because the very one are ones who have been put over the creation and have moved the creation off from doing what the Father actually wanted to do. When we follow that, we take on that spirit. That's the conception that we have in us now. It's feeding that which is in our thoughts, everything that we have. It's feeding that. And it could use that because we haven't yielded to the Father. So we either have a devil or we're going to have a Holy Spirit. Okay, whichever one we choose to feed. Now let's go over to Ephesians chapter 4. We have gone over this before, but let's go there again. Ephesians chapter 4. And let's look at Ephesians chapter 2. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 2. Okay, not 4. Ephesians chapter 2. Let's look at verse 2. It says here, in which you walked in past times when you and I were not allowing the light to come in, because we didn't like the light. We liked the darkness. And we hid from the light and did everything in darkness. So here goes, in time past, we're all in that area. Some of us, or all of us, are still fighting with darkness that's in there. Okay, so here goes down. According to the course of this world, because the one who is over this world, or having put over this world, is controlling everything that's in the realm of the earth that we have already identified, okay, as central and demonic. And it's not from above, but it's of the earth. So the one who is in the world, this is what it does. It has central and demonic energies. But you and I don't have to accept that, because the Spirit of the Father also penetrates in there. From above, it comes down and it's pure, and it wants you to hold on to that, to see the darkness that's around you, reject the darkness, accept the light, and ascend out, following the light. Okay, so in verse 2 now. Okay, so in the past times, in which you walked in past times according to the course of this world, notice, according to the prince of the power of the air, which actually was that which came, that we gave ourselves over, and it's using us to work the earth and create what it wants us to create. Okay? But we did that because something was within us already that accepted that spirit within us. Something was already there and accepted it in. We're going to see how it works. It's been that way. It's been the nature of things. Okay, so now the God that is now working in the children of disobedience, because now, why is it only working in the children of disobedience? Because the children were told to give 100 baths of oil and all the wheat. But something came and said, only give 50% of oil and only give 80% of wheat. So are we obedient anymore? No. So we took on that spirit, and that spirit is now working in there. But why would we do only 50% and 80%? Because something was already in us that would cause us to even consider that when that spirit came to us and said that. Something was already in us. Okay? It was already there. It wasn't necessarily alive and doing everything, but when this other spirit came in there, which was a thought, and the process of the thoughts, and we acted upon it, then all of a sudden, here comes the great conception and the greater creation, and here comes the death. Because once we act upon it, this is where the death comes in. We're falling. Okay? So now, here we go. This spirit is working in those who are disobedient. Guess who are disobedient? Well, you and I are hanging out in here because we didn't do exactly what we were told to do. Okay? That's why we're here. Now, we may not know it all because when it happened, when it first happened, we fell. And every time we come through the portal of woman, we are taught in this earth by the darkness that controls it. So we're coming up in the darkness and we are trained to love it. And all of a sudden we get a glimmer of light that is showing us the illusion in the darkness. And some of us decide to start following that light. And the more we follow that light, the more it shines to us. Because the closer we get, the more that we could see. Okay? And we have to shell these other things off us. Now let's go over to James or Yaakov, chapter 3 and verse 15. Okay, chapter 3 and verse 15. Okay, this is what we have been told here. Okay, the wisdom that is talking about where there's rivalry and there's strife and, we want to lie against the truth and lie against everybody. Here goes, and accuse everyone, which is the activity of devils, which we have. We are the creators of that. Okay, it says, this wisdom does not descend from above. No, it doesn't descend from above because it's with those who are working the earth. Those who have gotten you and I to dig for them. Okay, they're working the physical earth because we have said, hey, come on in. Come on in. Yeah, make yourself at home. And it's able to identify or work that which is already in us, okay, which was not necessarily acted upon, but because these guys are telling us all the stuff that is coming to the mental body now, we actually are now acting on it. So we didn't have to allow it to happen, but now we are, because that's all we've been around. We've been around the darkness, and we decided to close off the light and just do what the darkness says. This is natural to man. Natural. It's nothing that you have to be ashamed of, because everyone became subjected to it, because you were sown in it. You were sown in it. But when the light comes, now there's something that has to be done. Okay? Because now all of a sudden you have received a call to do something else. And your Father has done that through the Holy Spirit that he's allowed to shine into the darkness. Okay. Now, it may take some of us a long time to get out of it, and some of us not as long, but our duty is to come out of it when we see it. Okay, if we don't see it, there's nothing we could do because the Father just hasn't shown that to us. So pretty much, we're not going to do too much about it. So in chapter 3 and 15 here, we're seeing that the wisdom here that's in the earth, it's sensual and demonic, but it comes through the airwaves, and it works in the children that don't listen, that have been programmed in this other manner, and everything that we want to do is part of the darkness. It's part of what is dark. Okay. Now, we're going to look at this now because we're going to turn over to Matthew chapter 5, because we're going to look at what we are being programmed into, and it's actually mind. It's not really what you do with your body, because what you do with your body is a result of what's in your mind first. Okay? Out of the abundance of the heart, and the heart has a mind, remember we talked about that, okay? The gut, the heart, and your head, brain, okay? Out of the abundance of the heart, mind and the heart, you're going to act and you're going to speak based upon what your desires are. which is of the heart. It just comes down to that. We're going to act and we're going to speak. In Matthew chapter 5, let's look at verse 28. Okay, Yahshua says, but I say to you, whoever looks at a woman with the same lust to envy, but now it's a lust for this woman. That's lust. Okay, now we don't have to act upon the lust, but the lust that's there is already the devil. Okay, if it's a negative thing, it's already there. Now, if we start to take that in, whether it's lust, to be angry, whatever the case is, whatever we start allowing that to come in, we are given that devil's power. And when that devil actually wakes up or grows up, it takes over us. We don't have power anymore to do what is in the light, because we have fed the devil so much that all we want is a darkness. All we want to have is darkness. And the powers of the airwaves, or those who are ruling this earth, okay, they put thoughts through to that which is in us already and lead us further off course if that's what we are really wanting. Okay, so here goes Yahshua now. It says, you have already committed adultery with her in the heart, the mind, the spirit. It's a spiritual thing. You didn't have to do it physically. It's already going on. If we have the intent, if we have the intentions to go to this lady's house and to do something, and then while we're on our way to go over there and everything like that, we pulled up, we saw our husband's car in the driveway, and we decided to drive off, we already did. Because we left with the intentions, we left our home with the intentions of going to this lady's house and messing up. But we saw something that deterred us from it, but the intent is in the heart. It already happened. The thought is the first part of action, and the heart and the mind and the intent of your belly. Okay, all that is spirit. All that is spirit. You and I don't have to act upon something for it to be a problem. Okay? Many of us are fighting things off that we haven't acted upon, and we're fighting and praying over it. If you remember Shaul, he said he'd been praying for a long time because he was given a thorn in his flesh from Satan, and he's praying for this thing to leave, but it wouldn't leave. Well, what he had was something of the lower nature that was already in Shaul. And then, as you will, Satan was able to use that against him, but to keep him humble, to let him know that, hey, listen, you got this weakness too. And whenever so-and-so happened, look at it, it's coming out. And it kept him humble. That's what he said. Okay, now we're going to go over to Luke now. Now we already went up to Luke. James now. Okay, James, Yaakov again. And now we're going to look at Yaakov, James 1. James chapter 1. Okay, we went over this before, but we're going to do it again. Okay, let's look at verse, James chapter 1, let's look at verse 13. Okay, so here goes now. Now, taking what we have said before, let's consider this. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by Yahweh. For Yahweh cannot be tempted with evil, nor does he tempt anyone. So Yahweh is not going to tempt you or whatever, and no one else really could make you do anything. It has to be something that you want to do. But the forces that are about, they do things to get us to act upon what's already inside of us, the darkness that's already there. So notice it says here now, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own lust, the lust that you and I own, that we have used to create what's in us, the lower vibration that we have, that causes other forces that's in the earth to become attracted to us in thoughts. And so now this dishonest manager is able to use us because we didn't do what the Father said because we like the darkness. So we let this guy in who is dark. Okay, so let no one say that. Okay, for Yahweh cannot tempt, but everyone is tempted when he is drawn away by his own lust and enticed. So we're drawn away, we're pulled off the course a little bit, then enticed, and then we act. But if something wasn't in us for them to entice us, we couldn't act on it. But something was already there. And the Father allowed it to be there. Because we have to choose to follow the Creator. So the Creator is not going to create something and or put it or sow us in a hope, okay, or bring us out and just leave it that we have to follow only one way. No, the offering is a free will offering. It's a free will offering. No one is forced to offer. But if the offering comes, the Father is going to deal with, it has to be freely from everyone. Well, the offering for the other guy is free too. But I just tell you that it's more desirable because of what we have been sowed in. We have been sowed in the earth, or the earthly things, which is sensual and demonic. And we have a light coming from the most holy place through the holy place, through the court, okay, coming to us. And we have to grab a hold of this light to take us out of the darkness. But we usually don't like that much because we like the things of self. We like the things that makes us feel good. And these things is what the dishonest manager uses to keep us bound. Now, we're going to go over to James 4, okay, James chapter 4. And we look at some more of what's in us. It says, what causes war in verse 1 and fighting among you? Is it not from this, from your own lust? Here it goes again. Our own lust. This thing that we have created within ourselves. We didn't have to give it the power that we did, but we did, and now it's a lust. Okay? It's there. Our own lust. That battles in our members. It's fighting against the spirit of the mind that wants to uphold what the Father says. So sometimes we know what the Father says, or many times we know what the Father says, but when the passion and when the desire comes upon us, we said, forget what the Father says. We're going to fulfill this passion and this desire. That's what we do. Well, this is our devil. We have created it. Okay? And when we feed it, we give it more life. That's all we have done. And so now Satan has the power now to use devils. And the dishonest manager, or you want to call the dragon, the queen of heaven, or whatever you want to call it, has the authority to send messages or thoughts into the airwave for us to pick up. We don't have to act upon it, but when we do, we are going to do what that spirit wants us to do. That's what we're going to do. And that spirit is the spirit of the world, powers that's in darkness or in dark places. That's what it does. So we got to just see it that way and know when something comes to us and it says, well, and we're saying, okay, well, this is something that the Father doesn't want us to do, that we hold our own and not act upon it. Okay, because whenever we act upon it, then here comes your adversary that could use that against us. And that's what that adversary does. Your adversary, Satan, okay? They call Satan the devil because Satan uses the devil. Okay? You call Yahshua Messiah because Messiah used Yahshua. Okay, so that's really what the situation that we have going on here now. So now we go a little further. Okay, we're going to go to verse 2. You lust, but you do not have. You murder and covet. These are all the things that we lust after, different lusts. Okay, these are all the different lusts. It's not just lust to envy, but cannot obtain. You fight, these are all lust and war because we want somebody else's possession. Yet you do not have because we haven't done it the right way. We haven't turned to the light. We have acted through this dark force that we have, that's in us. That's already there. Now let's go to Genesis chapter 1. And let's look at how we got taken off course here. Remember what the dishonest man did? I have friends that will invite me into their houses. But something had already been there. Some kind of relationship had to be there for it to even come in. Okay, so here goes Genesis chapter 3. Let's look at verse 1. Now the serpent is not going to force its way in. Nope. Now the serpent was more subtle, meaning hard for you and I to detect. And crafty than any beast of the field which Yahweh had made. And it said to the woman, has Yahweh indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? Now there's something planted in the mental space. You got to see it. It's dealing with the mental body. It hasn't come down to the physical action yet, but it's in the mind. Let me put this in the mind to see what I could do to move her off. And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, Yahweh has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you even touch that thing, or you will die. Because it's this darkness that's going to cut you off from the light. And when you're cut off from the light, it's death. Okay? And the serpent said to the woman, you will surely not die. Don't worry about what Yahweh said. You could come and take back your acknowledgement of 50 and give 50. Your acknowledgement of 100 and give 50. And your acknowledgement of 100 and give 80. Okay? So nothing's going to happen to you if you give only 50 or 80. For he knows that in the day that you eat, your eyes are going to be open and you're going to know so much more. You're going to know what's going on in this lower world. All the central and all the stuff that's going on in here, you're going to know it. You won't be just the stuff that's above that he is dealing with you on. You're going to be going beyond that. Your eyes will be open and you will be gods, as gods. Knowing righteousness and evil, or really is good and evil. Okay, and this is what we deal with in the lower world. We deal with all kinds of issues. Today we're happy, tomorrow we're sad. Okay, it's just back and forth. It's good and evil. Okay, because we're caught up in emotional and mental suffering from the darkness that we have allowed to come in through those bodies. Okay, so here goes now. Notice what it says right here in verse 6. So when the woman saw that the tree was desirable for food. Notice what happened. He dealt with, he reached down to her desire body, which is the emotional part of her. Now she saw that it was desirable, but it was already there. There is no way for her to act upon something unless it was already there dormant. But this thing now went, and through the powers of the air, whatever the case you want to call it, it went and aroused that desire and woke it up. And now she acted upon the desire that was already in her. Something was already in her, or she couldn't have acted upon it. She couldn't even bring it to fruition if it wasn't already there. It was already there. The potential to go off course was already there. Okay, so it was desirable for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise. She acted. She acted on it, and then here comes the spirit that was there already. It was already conceived. It now is conceived in her further, and it's going to become mature, and they're going to die because they're going to be cut off from the light. Now I'm going to show you something now, which you already know also, but we're going to go to Second Samuel. 2 Samuel. We don't have to act upon it, but it's very, very desirable. Okay, and it already lives in us. If it didn't live in us, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't use it, but they're using something that's already in us. Now, if you know this part of you, now when it comes up, we can manage it. But if we don't know it, there is no managing, because we just don't know. We're blind. But if we see it, now we could manage. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, I'm going to read verse 1 to 7. It says, Yahweh said to Nathan, Yahweh sent Nathan to David. He came to him and said, there were two men in one city. One was rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except for one little ewe lamb he had brought up. He nourished it, and it grew up together with him and his children. It ate his own food, drank from his own cup, and slept in his arm. It was like a daughter to him. Now, a traveler, or you may say a guest. I have friends who are going to invite me into their homes. Guests. A traveler came to the rich man. Okay, so David now, see this lady out there, and something is in David. But David doesn't have to act upon it. Okay, but now here comes the powers of the airwaves that's hitting David. And now he kept his mind there, and it overpowered him. Okay, now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refused to take his own flock and from his own herd to prepare for the man or this guest who came to him, just a lust. So he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the lust that he had, this guest that came to him, but he didn't have to. Then David's anger burned against the man,
And he said to Nathan, as surely as Yahweh lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and because he had no pity. We usually don't see it when we're doing it. Then Nathan said to David, you are that man. You are that man. Yahweh has given you the light, and you allow this other thing to come in and actually remove you, take you sideways. Now let's look at what was happening here. Go to chapter 11 and verse 4. Okay. So David saw this woman out there. Okay. Let's go to verse 2. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the king's house. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. Something was in David at that point. And he looked upon her with what? What did Yahshua say? Lust. And he didn't fight it. Or he probably did fight it, but he kept entertaining it in his thought process, and he created this thing to become so powerful, or he allowed this thing to become so powerful that it overpowered him. Okay. David sent someone, but the only way he sent someone is because David was lusting here. To inquire about the woman, they reported, this is Bathsheba, the daughter of Elam and wife of Uriah the Hittite. So here goes, this is off course. Yahweh says, don't touch that man's wife. So Yahweh says. But David was entertaining this within his mind. And he gave way, as the scripture tells us, don't go to bed in a certain manner because it gives way to the devil. Well, when you and I are entertaining some thoughts that's not wholesome, this gives way in the same manner for your devil and my devil to get a lot bigger because we're feeding it. Steak bitter. Okay? We're feeding it. Okay, so now, but David sent messengers. He didn't have to do this. To go get her. She came to him, and he slept with her, because she had purified herself from her uncleanness. Then she returned to her own home. So David stepped over the line, because Yahweh has already said, don't do that. Don't do that. But David stepped over that line. Now, we can't condemn David because we may not be messing with somebody else's wife, but we have issues too. It don't have to be that bad. It could be worse too, but it doesn't have to be that. What are our struggles that's in the mind, in the mental space, in your mental body? What are the emotions that you have in the emotional body? What is it that causes us to move and say horrible things and, get off course? It's there. And these are the things that the Father is not going to do anything about, because you and I have to do something about it. We have to bring forth that offering. Now, let's look at something else that was going on. Let's go to Matthew 4 and look at something else. So we saw David, he went to one end. Okay, so David went to one end, and we're going to look at Matthew 4 and see something there. So Matthew 4. And verse 1. It said, then Yahshua was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. Where is the devil? It's something that's already in him. And so something came to him. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights after he was hungry, and then the tempter came to him by the spirits of the airwaves. But he had to come after what was already in him. And notice how he fought it, guys. Through the reverence of Yahweh. Look at it. The devil took him up into this big holy place, whatever, and said all these things. And every time, if you look at it, he says, it is written. You go to verse 6. Okay, if you are the son of Yahweh, throw yourself down, for it is written so and so and so and so and so. Yahshua said, it is also written. And every time something came up, this is the power, this is the light that gets us through the darkness. The reverence of Yahweh is the beginning, the chief part of knowledge. It's what's going to direct us in the light. Okay? However, we have another part of us, which is a darkness that's in this earth, that wants to direct us off to the darkness. Well, both sides are in there. Yahweh says, greater is he who is in you than he is in the world. That means that spark of Yahweh is in you. But he put you in the earth and hope, and you and I also have this other part in there. And through the powers of the airwaves, you and I are going to, based upon the powers of the airwaves that's coming at us, you and I, through whatever that lives in us, is going to invite something in. Now, if we feed the spiritual part of us, guess what we're going to allow to come in? We're going to allow light to come in. And the devil is going to leave. But if we allow the darkness to come in, the devil that's already in us, it gets bigger and bigger, and it overpowers us. Then it lives us. It lives and does what it wants to do, but we'll be thinking that we are the ones who are doing it. Until we wake up. Then we wake up, then we know that, okay, I was being controlled by this spirit, and you have to forgive yourself. I mean, or you could pray and ask forgiveness too, but it's going to be shown to you and I that something else lives there. Something else lives there. We're battling against spirits in our own members. It's already there. Okay. So now, my last scripture, okay? My last scripture. So now, it's going to be Proverbs chapter 4. Okay? Chapter 4, and look at verse 23. It says, guard your mind, or some of you might say, guard your heart. It's okay. Yeah, it could be the same thing. With all diligence, because if we don't do it with diligence, we're going to allow the dishonest manager to come in, and we're going to allow it to be a guest in there. And before you know it, he says, I have friends who's going to invite me in, so even after I've lost my job, I still have my job through them, through the friends, because I'm going to control them, because I'm going to cause them, if they allow me to, okay, to not do what their creator says and do what I say, and so they're going to be my slaves because they have yielded to my instructions. You got it. You got it. But when you see this, then you know where the fight is, because the fight is not with your neighbor. No, your neighbor is a child of the Most High, and your neighbor is in the place that your neighbor is at, because the Most High has them right there. There is nothing a man can receive unless it's from the Father. So if he can't see what you see, that's where he's at. He hasn't received anything else. And he's there, and if he's bugging you, he's there to bug you. You know, he's there to bug me. That's what his job is. I have to see now and understand what's coming to my mind. What's coming to my mind? Because the powers that's in the air, those entities, they're telling me that this guy is messed up and I need to do something about what he's doing. And I could take care of it in the right way, you know, in a gentle way, or in the way that may be forceful but not breaking any laws. Or if I go over there with my baseball bat. Hey, whichever way I'm going to do it, I could be doing it so it'll be light, or I could be doing it that there is darkness in it. So guard the mind with all diligence. But notice it now. For out of it flows the springs of life. What's in the spring? In a spring, there is water. Water is the Son, the only begotten Son. Okay? The only begotten Son springs forth from your mind. The power for you and I to become redeemed or reconnected comes from your mind. It's already in you. It's already in me. But horrible to say, the other part is in there too. The devil is in there too. Which one do we want to feed? Because whichever one we feed, that's the one that's going to grow. Whatever we feed is going to grow. So we could reverence the Creator, okay, and guard our minds against the darkness that's there. Do what the Creator says. That's the only way to reverence the Creator. And if we do that, then here comes the springs of life, which is light. And that light is life to all humanity, if we take it. And if we don't guard our mind and we chase after this other stuff that's in the world, remember, it's central. It's demonic. It's going to tell you at some point not to do what Yahweh says to do. At some point, it's going to say that. It could be giving you all the knowledge in the world, all the insight in the world, because they know already. The demons know and they tremble. But they've been around for so long, they know so much, and they could give you insight on so many things. But at some point, to get you where they want you to be, they have to tell you, don't do what Yahweh said. Somewhere along the line. Now, remember what I'm saying now. They have to come at you with that. They have to tell you to not do what your Father has told you to do. That's the only way that spirit could work in you, because now if you and I haven't been obedient to that, then that spirit comes along and tells us to do something, then that spirit works in us who are now have become children of disobedience, as the scripture put it. But all it is children who just simply don't want to cooperate with the body or what has been already put out there. So we do something else. But whatever we do, all of a sudden has become what is about death. So we got to see this, because this is how we are conceiving this. This is how we're causing this to grow more and more in our own persons. But we got to take control of the mind. That's the only reason why Solomon said that. Solomon told us that we have to guard that mind, because he knows the powers that's of it. He knows the powers that's there. Now, that's all I have to say today.